My attacks have no effect on you? Who decided that? You won't be able to regenerate fast enough! Providence Burn!
Captain Forest here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going over both these combatants to see who would win more often not in a cross-verse situation. Escanor from the 7 Deadly Sins versus Endeavor from Myheroacademia. Now if you guys are new to my channel, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content. Also huge shout out to the HQ squad, massive shout out to the team, they've been a huge help in my videos, so huge shout out to the team. Also shout outs to Sonic Speed, he also helped me with some of the calcs in this video, and just shout outs to anyone else who's also helped me with some calcs in this video too. But yes, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get right into this battle. Of course, dropping another anime matchup, I figured this one would be pretty fire. But anyway, I'm going to start off with Escanor, then I'm going to move on, then talk about Endeavor, and then I'm going to give my conclusions and chop it up from there. Now, in terms of like feats for Escanor, he's performed some pretty casual feats. He's been able to slice apart Gallon. Gallon himself can casually blow away towns and slice a mountain in half. So easily there's some casual town level, you know, some city to mountain level feats in 7 Deadly Sins. This is like them being super casual. Now Escanor faces off against Saldrus and demonstrates he's able to damage him. This very same Saldrus damages Ludociel. Ludociel himself is above the likes of Tamriel and also Zariel, who performed a feat together, and their combined powers on Estarossa, which was calced around the small island for the low ends. Then there's some country to large country, and it was also calced to multi-continental, so it just depends on what ranges you use. This was a very impressive feat, by the way, and this is all impressive because Estarossa himself, who was amped further by the 10 commandments, he was amped by 3 of them. He absorbed all of the 3 commandments, and then he returns literally after taking this attack, and he goes to fight both Tamriel and Zariel and does damage to both combatants. Saldrus himself was able to damage Mayal, who was using the Sunshine Grace. This version of Mayal is above his Estarossa persona, who fought both Tamriel and Zariel. We even see Escanor even battle and damage the Demon King, who was possessing Saldrus's body, and this was before he activated the one ultimate form to further increase his power. We've seen Escanor smack around Estarossa and also damage him with a Cruel Sun and Pride Flare explosion. Lastly, another feat for Escanor was during his iconic fight against the Salt Mode Meliodas. After powering up and activating his one form, he was able to damage and slice open Meliodas. Now, that's going to round up attack potency. Let's move on to speed. So Escanor can easily react to Assault Mode Meliodas in combat. Meliodas can casually deflect Gil Thunder's lightning, which was calced around Mach 2607, aka Massively Hypersonic Plus. Escanor can easily react to Saldrus while he was using Omnius Nebula and was able to also tag Saldrus also in combat. This speed behind the Vortex moves at 25 times the speed of light, so easily Escanor has some Massively Hypersonic Plus to FTL reaction speed. Very impressive. So that's going to round up stats. I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about Escanor's grace called Sunshine. Escanor's grace was originally bestowed by the supreme deity to the archangel Mayal and eventually passed to Escanor through unknown means. Due to Sunshine, Escanor changes form throughout the day, spending the night as a weak, frail man and the day as a strong, muscular warrior. His personality changes along with his body, becoming extremely timid while weak, but extremely prideful while strong. At dawn, Escanor undergoes a massive jump in power and continues to get stronger every second until noon, at which point his power reaches its peak. In addition to granting him great power, Sunshine allows Escanor to produce enormous quantities of heat and light. He normally keeps the aura somewhat contained, but as noon gets closer, he melts the ground around him and even his allies, and melting their metal armor. He can flare his aura at will to produce an immense burst of light and heat, seemingly melting Edinburgh even at dawn. He has his final form called the Ultimate One, which is a step up from his The One form. Escanor can maintain this form via sacrificing some of his life force and converting it into magic, but this does come with a cost. If he continues to do so, it will kill him. He can also use other methods, such as envisioning the sun, which triggers an activation of his form, and he also stores sunlight inside of his sacred treasure called Divine Axe Rita. I will break it down more later on as I proceed through this video. There's more to Escanor's fire than meets the eye. The heat and fire isn't your everyday conventional fire. No sir, This fire is magical in nature. These flames can bypass conventional means such as the flames themselves are spiritual. It's also shown to counteract Estarosa's demonic magical attacks called Blackout. Demonic magic can also interact and intercept holy magic. In Seven Deadly Sins, it's been confirmed that magic can affect you on a physical and spiritual level. His magic fire and the heat from it bypasses and negates mid-high regeneration in the type 3 mortality ranges. As a vampire who has a healing factor could not regenerate after being exposed to the heat of Escanor's grace. The flames are comparable to the demonic fires that demons use, which also do the same thing, except the demonic fire actually sticks to you instead of with Escanor. His flames don't really stick. Yes, they do stick, but you know what I mean. Blah. Escanor's soul is also protected by sunshine. Trying to consume his soul will burn your insides out and your whole body altogether. Don't believe me? Let's ask Melascula. She was the one who tried to eat it, not me. There are some unique techniques that Escanor utilizes with his sunshine power. The iconic move called Cruel Sun, which is a ball of fire which replicates the sun, which Escanor forms on top of his finger as he launches it at his opponent's Pride Flare. Escanor causes the Cruel Sun to burst in an immense radiation of heat. When fighting Estarosa, this technique vaporized the lake in an instant and also burnt a lot of Estarosa's skin. Divine Spear Escanor. After Escanor reaches his peak of his power and becomes the One, he thrusts his index finger into his opponent. Divine Sword Escanor. Escanor chops the air in the direction of his opponent, which slices the opponent's skin right open. Lastly, let's revisit Escanor's sacred treasure, Divine Axe Rita. An enormous one-handed axe, so heavy that even unsealed base Meliodas and base Gallon have difficulty lifting it. Much heavier than Diane's enormous warhammer, Gildeon, it is able to store the immense heat produced by Escanor during the day, allowing him to protect his surroundings and concentrate his attacks. He can call his axe to him from great distances by raising his hand in the air, causing the axe to fly to him. By saying Sacred Treasure Release, Escanor can unleash a massive burst of light and heat, blinding all opponents around him. So that's pretty much it for Escanor. Let's move on to Endeavor and see what he brings to the table. Endeavor himself demonstrates he can knock back and break several bones inside of a high-end Nomu. The Star and Stripe used the intercontinental missiles to attack Shigaraki, causing the clouds to split and vaporize the ocean. This very same high-end took a blast from one of these missiles' explosions. Endeavor can clash with Paranormal Liberation Warrock All for One Shigaraki's air cannon. In fact, Endeavor himself grabbed All for One Shigaraki and sets him ablaze with a prominence burn, which almost kills Shigaraki. Star and Stripe state that if her giant laser Kuranos killed Shigaraki, then Endeavor would have been able to do the job too. The high-end Nomus were able to also tank one of the blasts from the missiles. The explosion was also calced around continent level. So in terms of AP, easily Endeavor would scale to continent level, which is very impressive. Now as for speed, Endeavor is pretty much above the lower ranking students who they themselves have massively hypersonic plus relativistic speeds and even FTR reaction speeds. Characters like Tokoyami who can react to Kaminari's lightning. This was calced around Mach 478 to Mach 2146, aka massively hypersonic plus. Mina can react to Ayama's laser beam. This was calced around 17% the speed of light. You can take it even higher as Invisible Girl reacts to Ayama's laser beam, which was also calced at 1.81 times the speed of light. So characters like Tokoyami, other characters like Deku, other lesser characters too, they'd all scale to this. Even the pro heroes, Endeavor would scale to this too. It's just definitely above those characters, obviously except Deku. Deku's kind of built different, but regardless, easily, you know, pros are fighting like Shigaraki, high tiers in the verse, so the speed scaling would apply appropriately. So that's it for stats. I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about Endeavor's quirk and talk about some of the more unique things he brings to the table. So Endeavor's quirk allows him to manipulate fire. He can perform many techniques with his fire and use them in many ways. He's shown great control over his quirk. He can perform a firestorm with great precision. His precision is so keen, he's able to destroy miniature bombs too small for him to even see, which is very impressive. So he's got some good accuracy feats with his flames. Endeavor can also throw explosive fireballs. He can also send his flames through the ground to create an explosion and also erupt from below to also like pressure his opponents, which is very impressive. He can also perform jet burn, which is a technique where he compresses his fire in his fists and shoots out a beam of fire to incinerate you. Endeavor also notes that he charges up his flame's temperature by compressing it in order to deal the finishing blow. In character, he always goes for one shots as his technique is tailored to that. Brilliant Scorching Fist Hell Spider, which is another technique he uses where he shoots out multiple beams of fire from his fingers. He pretty much uses it like strings, which is pretty impressive and pretty cool. He's also used this technique to pretty much slice and vaporize the top of a building in small pieces of rubble, so he can use this to pretty much slice up his opponents. He can also use his like infamous ability, which is like one of my favorite abilities in the show, pretty much amazing. It's called the Prominence Burn. I think it's called Prominence Burst as well in the anime, but this is an awesome technique he's used where he amps and flexes his heat and basically fires this giant compressed blast of fire which completely vaporizes you. He's also able to do it in the air, and he's also demonstrated to pretty much cause a giant area of effect even in the air too. He can also blanket a large area with flames. Endeavor can also create a fire construct such as a fire spear to launch at his opponent. He can also lace his attack with fire to deal more fire damage, and he himself has fire resistance and pain tolerance and willpower. If Endeavor uses his flames too much, he will overheat and it starts to burn him, but he's able to resist it, and he's also able to prevent it from affecting his performance. That's why he's able to keep pushing through. He was also stabbed in the eye by a Normu in his face, and he literally still wanted to keep going. So even when he's like overtaxed and overheated, he's still able to push through and he's able to just ascend and pass through those limits. Okay, that's pretty much it for both these combatants. I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on who I think wins more often than not in a cross-verse situation. So in terms of AP and speed, I'm going to go ahead and award those to the combatant. Now in terms of AP, and depending on what ranges we use for Escanor and Endeavor, Endeavor easily has continental scaling, and if we use like the better scaling for the 7 Deadly Sin characters, then Escanor would easily have multi-continental AP. He would like AP Stomp. Endeavor, he has the huge AP advantage going into the fight. And even if we downplay and say continent, I'd still lean a little bit more so with Escanor in AP. But if we downplay Escanor and have him only in the country to large country levels, then yes, Endeavor would have the AP advantage very easily and he'd AP Stomp. But later on, I'll mention why the AP wouldn't necessarily be a huge, like a huge issue for Escanor. Now in terms of speed, they both have some pretty good speed scaling, upscaling as well. However, I do think when it comes to scaling in the speed department and the quantifications, Escanor is probably faster in the tier. He's easily 25 times the speed of light compared to, Endeavor's measly 1.81% the speed of light. I think that's like a 23 times difference. So that's still kind of huge. That's definitely a blitz. Especially if it comes down to the distance. If the distance between these two combatants is not huge, let's say it's only like 20 meters, which is probably like the size of a pool, or 30 meters, that's fast enough to get off whatever you need to do. But if it's like kilometers, that's different. But anyway, so in terms of like speed, I lean a little bit more so with Escanor in terms of like the speed department and the AP. But I'll explain why AP isn't necessarily relevant per se. In terms of win cons, Escanor, he has his sunshine, his grace. We all know how it works. Since the fight is taking place in New York City, probably more so in the afternoon, Escanor is going to be at his peak. The 1 is going to activate. He, as soon as high noon hits, Escanor is going to be at his peak. His AP is going to exponentially increase, which will also make it even more difficult for Endeavor if we give him the AP, of course. We also know that the grey sunshine, the heat, the magical and the spiritual properties behind that flame is far more fundamental than Endeavor's standard fire that he uses with his quirk. Of course, the fire can also, vaporize buildings, on a molecular level. You can even argue some higher stuff. But of course I could argue some resistances for Escanor. He's taken, you know, fire a lot more fundamental. He has a lot more fundamental resistances compared to conventional, you know, vaporization and stuff. So I think Escanor would be fine if it came down to those flames. But obviously if we're talking AP, if we, you know, go the route where we give Endeavor the AP, then those resistances won't matter because the AP gap is so huge. So Endeavor would one-shot if he got his hands on Escanor. He'd just like Prominence Burn, Flash Fire Fist, you know, Jet Burn, or just punch him in the face really hard. Those are some really solid win cons for Endeavor. But obviously looking at it from that perspective, however, if we look at things from the stuff that I've given both Endeavor and Escanor, he has his Cruel Sun. He can close the distance with the Cruel Sun. And if he throws the Cruel Sun, especially with the speed edge going in his favor, the Cruel Sun is going to hit Endeavor. It's going to vaporize him. It's going to one-shot him. The Flames also, as mentioned, it's more fundamental. It will bypass Endeavor's durability. The Type 3 Immortality negation will also kick in too. So Endeavor's not healing from those attacks. Those flames will continue to burn him down to those levels. And due to its magical properties, it's definitely going to be, you know, a match for Endeavor's flames, especially with the multi-continental AP that I've awarded to Escanor. It's going to one-shot. It's going to be a GG. And I see Escanor winning more often than not in that scenario. So in this scenario, I'll give victory to Escanor. Better AP, slightly faster in the speed department. The fundamental fires in the sunshine, especially with his ability to gain stronger during the day, that's also going to further make it an AP stomp. So I give victory to Escanor in this situation. Now, if Escanor didn't have the AP advantage, I don't think that's going to matter. Due to how the flames work, Endeavor has shown no resistance to spiritual attacks or fundamental magic attacks that affect you on those types of levels. These flames aren't ordinary conventional fire. It's not something you can just absorb. You won't be able to absorb them to that degree. And if those flames and the heat is exposed or touches Endeavor, he's going to get one shot. It's going to completely ignore the durability or the AP. It's just going to get one shot, especially since I gave the slight speed edge to Escanor. Those fundamental properties will apply. Those hexes will make up for the lack of AP, even if I was to downplay Escanor in terms of AP. And that is the context and the reasons why I don't think AP's going to be a huge issue, even if, you know, Escanor is, you know, downgraded to only country or large country. Just the other properties make up for the lack of AP, because AP is not everything, you know. Just having the huge AP advantage in certain matchups, it's not the end all be all. There's other ways to dispatch of opponents. It can be BFR, it can be different types of hexes, just other ways to put your opponent in a compromising situation where you are the dominant force and your opponent is not. So those are other objectives to take victory. It's not always a, you know, an AP stomp. Now, even if stats were equalized, even if I was to say it was an equal stats scenario, irrelevant, just due to the fact Escanor has these types of magical properties behind his fire and his sunshine grace, and the, you know, the Cruel Sun, the Define Escanor attacks, it's just going to take out Endeavor. Endeavor has no way of protecting himself to that degree. And even if I argued some things like Prominent Burn and things like that, Escanor can just swat that stuff away. He has his Divine Axe Rita, he can just block it back, or he can even unleash his own AoE and you know, even blind Endeavor. So more often than not, I have to give victory overall to Escanor. Escanor has ways to make up for AP if I downgrade, and even if I didn't downgrade the AP, he would simply AP stomp. He has the slight speed edge going into this fight. The hacks properties behind his sunshine and his fire and his grace and the heat behind Escanor, you know, Escanor's heat is far more fundamental than Endeavor's normal heat that he uses in combat, and I don't think that Escanor's can have any issues dealing with Endeavor's fire. So more often than not, I have to give victory to Escanor. But thank you guys for watching. If you guys enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content, and leave your thoughts down in the comment section. But yes, it's been real. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.